Thank you, Jennifer. We have a question here from the audience. And we're going to direct this to Chuck Credo at the moment because we were talking about this before and it's kind of right up the street. Do UFO sightings increase at certain times of the year with certain moon cycles? And do abduction reports increase at those times as well? Chuck Credo.
Yeah, so we were looking at these questions a little earlier in the prep for it, and I found that one, and I think, Kathy, you and I were talking a little bit about this earlier. So I had always had a theory going on, and Paul, you and myself have both talked about the question of, do sightings tend to happen more around the month September, October area? And the reason we were asking that question, we're here because of a very historical event that happened on September 3rd. And then Benny Gardner Hill, September 19th to the 20th. And my own father's experiences happened roughly around this time of year. I've taken a large number of reports this time of year in this area. And I was always curious, what does that have to do with it? I mean, is there any evidence to suggest that? So we started looking at the National UFO Reporting Database run by Peter Davenport. And obviously MUFON has some other statistics I'd love to take a look at sometimes, but you can actually break it down by each month across the U.S. and by the year, and you can go right up. And I started seeing a very clear pattern. That pattern was every time that the year had a higher incident of reports, it was always the same month. That month was June. It was always June. And then roughly in 2003, you see July being that month. And right around 2003, 2004, you start to notice that it goes down in August, and then it's always up in September and October, and then it goes completely down, and then it starts up. And from that point on, July is always the month that you have the most reports. So, Kathy, you and I were talking a little bit about, well, why is that? And I have my own theory, and you kind of confirmed that theory. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Well, we were talking about the states where the most reports are made, and I spoke about Florida and California, and we were talking about the good weather year-round in both of those places, and how more people are outside looking into the sky, regardless of the month. And so I thought that maybe that played into it. And we started talking about abduction reports. And we, on my team last year, in the fall of the year, were receiving maybe 50 to 75 reports per month. But after January of this year, it began to increase. And now we're receiving an average of about 150 reports every month. I'm wondering, why is that happening? And I really cannot say for certain why it is. I don't know if it's the fact that I've been speaking a lot about MUFON's experience or research team, or if there are actually more cases taking place of more people who are willing to make confidential reports. So it's a big question mark in my mind.
And to touch on that, you had also mentioned 2015 and on, there seems to be less reports. In fact, July of 2014, in this month, in this year, and that's pretty rare. I mean, if you look at the statistics, if you look at the years, starting in 2014, according to the National UFO Reporting Database, the reports have gone down slightly every year. But 2014 seems to, in fact, July was the only month that there's ever been over 1,100 reports given to that site. So it's interesting to see that go down the last 4 years.
Well, thank you, Chuck and Kathy. Anyone else have a response to a question from Zoe in England? Okay. Oh, right. You have a question, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, please speak close to the mic.
Okay, my name's Andy, and I was wondering whether there's any difference in the variations of density of reports in the southern hemisphere.
Okay, good question. Someone like to respond? Someone, please respond. Mark that term. How about you, sir?
here is in response to the fact that we all live in the northern hemisphere, and we're probably not as aware as we should be about the southern hemisphere reports. So I'll be the one to say that we don't know. And sorry. Can't know everything. We try.
Thank you, Mark. Honest answer. Does the young lady have a question from the audience?
My name's Gail.
They're really close to the mic.
Okay. I have a trifecta. I'm going to do this real quick. My first question, kind of staff observation, is to Jennifer. Great presentation. I noticed a couple of things on the stones. One was the supposed man bag. You made a connection to the Sumerians. I was wondering if you had any discussion about that, and the ages. Also, I made a connection with the keystone to Pumapunku. I don't know if that's been discussed. And I believe that's it for that. The other question was for Paul Eno on the 9 unidentified species of parasites. And I believe I understood during your presentation you made a reference to small, lowercase gods, possibly Sumerian, the fish gods, etc. That kind of pantheon, we'll call it, if you feel that they are parasitic. And then the other question is to Kathleen Mark. I have a very good acquaintance source who, this is back in the 70s, so we didn't have all this high-tech stuff going on, and she is an experiencer, has been an experiencer all her life. On a whim, called your Aunt Betty, and Betty picked up the phone and said, "Are you a journalist?" So she was very scared and nervous, a young adult, and said, "No, ma'am, I'm not." And she basically presented herself to her, and Betty said, "I'll tell you what," she lived down in the Merrimack Valley, Mass area, and she says, "Go along the river." So that would be the Merrimack River. And she gave her a site that I'm very aware of that runs in the valley. And sure as she did have contact. So I was wondering if you ever had that kind of conversation with your aunt about the river systems being a conduit for contact.
I think we just filled up the rest of the show. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer Stein. Jennifer, if you could say 5 or 10 words about the background of Göbekli Tepe. Just so it's for our people on the radio, I always wanted to say that, people on the radio land will be able to understand it.
So I don't think that she asked a specific question about the Sagba text, but I referred to them, and for the listening audience, there is a Sumerian cylinder text. It's in the University of Pennsylvania Museum in Philadelphia, and it discusses the ancient cattle and grain story out of Sumer. And Sumer is a culture that developed between the Tigris and the Euphrates River around 5,000–6,000 BC, maybe earlier, we're not sure. And this cattle and grain text discusses two beings, Lanar and Ashtar, who descend from this mysterious place referred to as the Duku. We don't know if the Duku is a high mountainous region or is some kind of craft or is from another planet or some other dimension. It's a mystery. And these two beings bring farming to humanity. They bring the intelligence of how to do advanced agriculture and the development of cereal grains into a food source, or refining natural wheats and grains that were maybe here on the planet, but turning them into developed agriculture. So that's called the Sagba text. I'll turn the mic over to Kathleen, who can discuss the second part of the question.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Kathleen Mark.
With regard to the question on whether or not my Aunt Betty and I had discussed the prevalence of sightings of UFOs along rivers, I did have a discussion with Betty when I was in my late teens, probably 18 or 19 years old, and it was sightings that my girlfriends and I had of UFOs along the Merrimack River as we were out driving around at night. And so that about the extent of my knowledge. I know that Betty did speak with many, many people who had had UFO sightings in many different areas.
Thank you, Kathy. I guess there was another part of the question directed to me in reference to parasitical entities. This is a concept most people are not used to hearing about in paranormal studies. When you get beyond UFOs, people will think of ghosts. Must be spirits of the dead. Well, it's been a long time since I believed any of that. I think that the truth, at least as we see it, Ben and I see it, is very different. Parasitical entities we feel are perhaps undiscovered science. They seem to be life forms. I've been running into them for the better part of 50 years, and I couldn't really explain them beyond the theology of the demon, which is such as it is, in poltergeist cases, exorcism cases, things of this kind, until I started thinking of it in a new way. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but the way I see it, there are at least 9 different species of these, and I kind of rank them from the top, which is the wise, and believe me, they're not wise in any way that's going to benefit us. And are they demons or are they evil? What do you mean by evil? I hate to be relativistic, but when it comes to something that's good for the mosquito that sucks your blood, it's good for them. It's not necessarily good for us, particularly if there's a disease attached to it. So these are relative things. The wise tend to work alone. They will at times follow families for generations. And this stuff gets pretty weird. For example, I was in California lecturing in San Diego one time, and there was a woman in the audience who just drew my attention. You know, it wasn't anything to do with her good looks or anything, just there was something wrong going on there. And she came up to me later and said, I needed to talk to you. And sure enough, she had one of these following, it might have been one of the wise, it might have been one of the others, following her family for generations. They were all psychic, all the way down to her grandmother, great-grandmother. They all had these gifts, and you could feel something attached to her. You kind of know what these things feel like, and it's not good. So there's that, and then they kind of move down the food chain, so to speak, to the bottom of the line, which is the brats, as I call them. And they're two-dimensional thinkers, that they will act like small children. And one of the most fascinating tendencies of all parasites, particularly the lower echelon that I've found, is that the longer they spend attached to a human host, or in our world, as it were, because I believe they're multiversal creatures, you know, they come and go, we've seen them working with 3 or 4 different worlds at the same time to feed. The longer they spend doing that, away from their own worlds, the more they tend to forget their own origins, which I think is really fascinating. I was working with a very famous artist in New York City. I know that Peter Robbins knows who that is, but I don't want to say her name. For 25 years, she had one of these, I believe it was one of the brats, throwing her down the stairs and doing all this sort of thing. And the thing was afraid to leave her because it didn't know what to do, or where to go, or how to eat. And they need to eat. These are creatures, they're not spirits. They're highly physical in their own world, according to my opinion. In the middle echelon, you have the farmers, who will literally farm you or your family, sometimes again for generations. They'll sometimes move from one member of the household to another. We see this day in and day out. And I don't want to take too much time on this, but that's essentially how it works. There'll be a long exposition of this in my next book that's coming out next year. And you can stay tuned to our website for that, behindtheparanormal.com. But that's essentially it. I want to stress that I am the last person, and so has been, to take away personal responsibility. I think we're responsible for our own problems. I think there's a tendency to say the devil made me do it. You know, the blame, especially in modern, you're not going to blame someone else for your own problems. But I think it's there are these parasites which will push your buttons, feed on you. They learn. They're very intelligent. And how do you fight this? Well, Ben and I call it the Peter Pan theory. Think happy thoughts. Sounds dumb, but boy, does it ever work. We're doing poltergeist cases, I got rid of the worst poltergeist I ever dealt with by using a joke book. Bring in positive energy, especially humor. I always told my boys growing up, always laugh but not at each other. Keep it positive. So essentially, positive energy will cut off the food supply of the negative energy, and you're at square one with the these things. So, okay, so we will I would guess I would comment on that. Shane has been working with me for years now, almost 20 years on this parasite issue, and I will try not to trip poor Jennifer here. And Shane, if you'd like to comment on that.
So, I'll be talking more about this a little bit later today, 2:45 to 4 o'clock, and I'll be getting really in-depth to what initiates a connection between us and these parasites, what draws them to us, and it's actually frequency-based, emotional frequencies, and I'll be really elaborate with that. Once you understand that actually what it initiates and allows it to continue, you understand how simple it is to get rid of. And the common techniques that are used by most people to get rid of them don't work. And there's a reason why they don't work, and I'll be discussing that thoroughly later on.
All right, thank you, Shane. We have a question from the audience? Yes. Please step right up close to the mic there and state your question.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I was wanting to ask you about dogs and what the different policies are mean. And what does it mean when a dog changes color?
Okay, was that for anyone in particular?
Anyone in particular?
Okay. Anyone want to talk about orbs? Because I think this is relevant to this concept, because orbs seen in the sky that people can call them UFO. So Kathy Martin.
I worked on several cases where orbs were involved inside people's homes and also in their yards. I spoke yesterday, I showed a photograph of an orb that was white and had a light blue halo around it. And this orb entered the man's bedroom, flew across the room, put out iridescent tentacles, and then drove into his body, and he was cured from cancer that night. So that was really a benevolent experience. I worked on an experience, and Paul is familiar with this because I asked him to become involved in it as well, of a pilot at an airport in the Southwest. And he was observing and taking photographs of red orbs. And also he was seeing gray orbs with goat faces inside them. And he was having highly negative experiences. He even referred to them as demonic because in one case he was in his office, he had his shirt off, and he felt fingernails tear across his chest, and he had bleeding scratches on his chest. So both positive and negative.
Thank you, Kathy. Chuck Reed.
Yeah, just real briefly, I can't answer the question. I don't know if anybody here really can. I mean, if we knew what different colored orbs meant, somebody would be writing the next book and probably going on another lecture tour, right? But what I can tell you is there are web pages designed just around orange or red orbs alone. You can find Facebook pages where people report just specifically to those types of orbs. In Ossipee, New Hampshire, not too far from here, about 15 minutes north on 16, I read multiple reports all in the same night that were given to the police department in Ossipee, New Hampshire. All these people were on 16 going northbound, red orbs following their cars, they pulled over to call police, all in the same night. It's fascinating. My own family had a place at Ossipee Lake, which they witnessed. My brother, my niece, and my nephew, orbs coming down, crisscrossing over Ossipee Mountains, and then going out the opposite direction they came. And I know multiple people that see these orbs. Actually, it's one of the most common types of sightings that I have probably taken in the area. Just to, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Chuck.
I wanted to ask, does anybody know about the shadow people? They look like people that are just like out of the shadow of the movie.
Well, I'll just take that briefly. The term was invented by a good friend of ours, Heidi Hollis, relatively recently. And the whole idea of, I got producers get very upset with me when I describe it this way, but when you have the membranes, or grains, as physicists call it, BRANES, which supposedly can separate one parallel world from another. Our opinion, maybe we're wrong, is you look across it, and it's something that looks just like you, but they're gonna look spooky and weird because they're gonna be glowing because of the plasma, and they look at a magnetic field, and they may be involved in this brain. So they can also, sometimes they're dark and shadowy. It could be as simple as, what we call that simple, it could be as simple as that you're simply looking across a membrane into a parallel reality, and there's the being, or there's your Uncle John who died 6 years ago, and he never died in that world. I mean, it really gets wild. So I think it's the shadow people. Also, on the other hand, we run into the parasite cases all the time. Apparently the little ones. And Shane and I have been working, have been working since 2005 to the Torrington, Connecticut case, which we call the Litchfield Triangle. And people see these little short things running around in their houses that are just dark, shadowy, humanoid-shaped creatures. So we really don't know, but we suspect they may be parasitical, or they may be just neutral and seen across the world boundaries of parallel reality. Anybody else have some thoughts on that? Shane? Your thought on the shadow people? You and I kind of work on that.
Yeah, so a lot of people associate shadow people with negative entities. I found that's not always the case. A lot of it has to do with what Paul was talking about, multiversal type of things, and crossovers, what we call bleedovers, but I've encountered the shadow people that were actually helpful sometimes, and a lot of times they are negative. And later on in my discussion, I'll actually be showing a photo of one that I took that was actually running up on me. So if you guys stick around, you'll be able to see that.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Any more comments on that subject? Okay. We have just a few minutes left of the show. I'd like to get maybe one more brief question in from Katie from California. That kind of rolls off the tongue. As for anyone on the panel, do you find that people who are abducted have increased psychic powers? Anyone like to deal with that? Let's start with Kathy Martin.
Denise Downer and I asked that question in our 2012 study of 75 people, 50 were experiencers, and 88% said that they had increased psychic or intuitive ability that they believed was the result of their experiences. We also asked that question in a recent MoveOn study of 516 experiencers. And again, there was definitely heightened psychic and intuitive abilities among experiencers, and particularly among abductees.
I have to agree with Kathy, and at the same time there is a factor I can best describe by example. Several years ago, Jennifer Stein and myself, the great UFO writer and a real champion in the field, Robert Salas, and his lovely wife Marilyn, spent some time in the center of Crop Circle country at the height of the season. It was a very, very special experience for all of us. Jennifer had arranged the trip. We had one of the local authorities on the ground bring us to 3 sites on the first day. And Wiltshire is so beautiful. I expected Jane Austen to ride up in a carriage at a certain point. It was overwhelming. And when you're on the ground with crop circles, you don't have the drama of looking down on them. My point being that people have asked me after the fact, did you feel something when you were in the circles? And I said, absolutely. I have no idea, though, whether or not it was the phenomenology or physiology of the enhanced harmonic signature or any other number of factors that I was experiencing, or just the jaw-dropping 15-watt bulb reality of, oh my God, I'm in a crop circle. If you have had an abduction experience, and you have the psychic abilities sitting there, the same way that, gee, I'd like to draw and paint, but I've never really tried it, but now I think I'm going to. I'm not sure how that sort of figure-ground relationship works, but I do know the stats that Kathy has talked about are correct.
Okay, thank you, Peter Robbins. We have 2 minutes left. First of all, I want to thank our wonderful speakers. Stay there, okay? Thank our wonderful speakers for this tremendous exchange today. Thank those who wrote in.
Massachusetts, the Greater New England UFO Conference. We'll be having Paul Eno, Mark Antonio, Shane Saroy, sorry about that, and many other exciting speakers at Leominster City Hall, www.newenglandufo.com. I have buttons I'm giving out to people. If you're interested, we hope to see you there.
So please see all the website links on our site, behindtheparanormal.com, which is obviously our show site. You'll be able to get, if you wish, there are free 800 hours or more of shows for our past 11 years on the air, including our 4.5-year run on CBS Radio, and they're all free again, behindtheparanormal.com. Also, some very interesting links to the sites of our speakers, etc. So we will, next week, we're going to have, what are we going to have next week? We're going to have an open line show with Shane Searwood. That's right. So that's going to be from our studios in Rhode Island, and all paranormal subjects are open game. And we leave you this afternoon with a beautiful thought from the 14th century Persian poet Hafiz. I love this guy. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. Okay, we still have another minute. All right. I want to also thank our impromptu producer today, Ben, who's usually my co-host on the show. He's been invisible, but this couldn't have happened without him. And I never worry when he's in charge. He loses a little more weight. But there we go. But in any case, tune in. That's Ben in the back of the room. So again, thank everyone. Great audience today. And do tune into our show. It's every week, 12 to 1 Eastern Time on WOON, AM and FM radio. You probably can't get to this area because it's too far away. But ONWorldwide.com is the site. Just hit the ON, the ON at work icon, and you'll be able to not only hear the show, but have the jarring experience of actually seeing us there in the studio. And we usually have a good time and really great intelligent guests such as these folks. So we're done. I'm Paul Eno. There's Ben Eno back there. Thank you so much.
We are off the air. Thank you so much, Enos. Truly a pleasure being part of this panel. The next speaker, I can say, really not worth sitting in for. Go have a nice lunch. But if you stick around, I'll be speaking next, starting in 15 minutes. Also, let's end this wonderful conference on the greatest note we can in terms of benefiting children's services here in Exeter. And the way to do that, see that distinguished looking man with his hand up in the back there? He's not a male model. That is Brian Wall. He is the chief honcho for this event. With the wonderful Kiwanis, we are having a raffle. And there are some spectacular prizes. Raffle tickets are $1 each or 5 for $3. Shell out, see him, and Brian, when are we going to be unveiling those prizes and awarding them? After my talk. Another reason to come back after I've spoken to get the prizes. 15 minutes, folks.
Numerous television programs and documentaries. Peter Robbins was a founding member of Bud Hopkins Intruders Foundation and was Bud Hopkins' assistant for many years. He was the first event coordinator for the Sci-Fi Channel's Alien Abduction Phenomenon Symposium that was organized to promote the release of the Steven Spielberg's miniseries Taken from 2007 until 2010. And he's been a consultant for the city of Roswell, New Mexico, coordinating some of their UFO symposiums, of which I had the pleasure of helping him. In 2012, he was made a member of the French Académie d'Ufologie, which he was made a member of in 2013. And he's been invited to give testimony along with many other UFO researchers as part of the citizens' hearings disclosure that took place at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2013, I think that was. He is also the associate producer of the documentary film that I was responsible for making with Bob Terry this year, Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton. Peter Robbins lives in New York City. He holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Painting and Film History from the New York City's School of Visual Arts, where he taught painting for more than a dozen years. He's worked as a deckhand on a Norwegian merchant marine fighter. He was also a studio assistant to an abstract expressionist painter named Adolf Gottlieb. He's been a house manager for many New York theaters and repertory companies in New York City. And he has been a crisis intervention volunteer and a shift supervisor for the Samaritans International in New York City. Peter Robbins is an experienced New York City tour guide and a world traveler, an accomplished photographer, and a recipient of both gold and platinum records for art direction. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Peter Robbins.
Thank you to my so-called friends for not ratting out that big secret. I'm sorry to say my time is up. Wow. This work is actually, if you're crazy enough to try to earn a living at it, it's not only an awful way to earn a living, it's damn stupid, but the perks on the job can be absolutely phenomenal. I really don't have much to say about what's been said, except to thank all these wonderful people for doing what they just did, and on behalf of the Academy, I accept.
Get closer to the
This talk that I'm going to give is not one that a subject that I would have originally gravitated toward. About a dozen years ago, a conference organizer approached me and said, I'm looking for somebody to speak on essentially this topic. And I thought to myself, not my cup of tea really. I zone in more on classic cases. I try to couch my studies solidly in American history, in part because it fascinates me, because ufology and UFO-related events are indeed a part of American and world history, although they're always seen as outsider subjects. Also it seemed very sensational and tabloid and National Enquirer-ish. I'm not a conspiracy-oriented person by nature. At the same time, I know that by simple definition, history is in great part defined by conspiracies. One or more people plotting in private for usually some nefarious aim, and if it happens, then it becomes part of the historical record. But I don't look for this kind of challenge. My response to the organizer was, well, that's interesting, but let me tell you what I'm interested in talking about. He listened to me very patiently and then basically said, thank you very much. I'm looking for somebody to speak about this subject. If it's not you, I'll hire somebody else. And I thought, Yes, exactly. I have come at it several times, and it became personal as I refined the number of people down in the presentation to 8 individuals. And then, quite honestly, as I was developing it, thought, wait a minute, some of these are classic individuals, all of whom fit the criteria of a death under somewhat questionable circumstances, or timing, or their high visibility cut off at a certain moment, or their relative youth. But of these 8 people, I knew 4 of them, and 3 of them were not just friends, they were good friends. Hang on, seem to have gotten myself into a situation where I am potentially investigating the murders of 3 of my friends. And then it became serious for me. Lee Harvey Oswald. I am of a generation where I remember that terrible day when the President of the United States was murdered. It had a tremendous impact on my life. I was a geeky little kid who hero worshipped John Kennedy, and I was never really able to let go of that thread. As things codified and as I got older, this notion of the lone gunman, that crazed individual that makes their way through and knocks off a famous person. In fact, I've come to kind of define it in my own way of thinking of. In American culture, sadly, it has become not that uncommon. If you want to become well-known in a hurry, kill somebody famous and you're there. You cut through all the work and save yourself a lot of time and energy. Of course, you're either dead or in jail for the rest of your life. I do not accept the single gunman theory. And I remember on the 30th anniversary of the murder of John Kennedy, President Clinton made some remarks about it. And he cited something that normally I would not only accept as true, but as a guiding principle for me. Essentially, that when a person who is beloved, who is a national figure, who is important to many people, who is iconic, dies in a seemingly senseless accident or act of violence, we need to ascribe meaning to it, because the thought that it was just something that happened is almost intolerable. But of course, Kennedy was killed by a lone gunman. I was furious that President Clinton still out, because he should have known better, or he did know better, but that's the party line. What we're looking at here involves conspiratorial thinking to a degree, in that some of these people in my field, especially now, in this golden age of anything goes conspiracy, want them on a certain level to have been murdered rather than, died of some other cause. So, because I have a lot of factual material, sometimes I like my colleagues, give a talk cued by the next slide. This one I do have to work from notes, so forgive me for those moments when I just sit here into the paper. This gentleman, some of you know as Jack Ruby. We certainly know for a fact that he murdered the alleged killer of John Kennedy. And I say alleged because that's all it is. The one statement that came out of Lee Harvey Oswald, beyond the hundreds of thousands of pages that have been written about him, I'm a patsy. I'm a fall guy. And a lot of people feel he was the lone gunman. A lot of people feel he was part of a conspiracy. Some of us are not even sure if he pulled the trigger. But one thing is for sure, this man killed him. He is connected with the mob, and he died of cancer shortly after in his jail cell in Dallas. More about that later. George Bush was, he or his people were quite savvy to ways to deflect. I remember when Nixon was president, at a certain point he started to do the double V, which had previous to that been a sign of, we're going to win over the Vietnam War, we're going to get out of the war. It was something that the peace movement used, and then he co-opted it and they stopped. Early on in his presidency, he began to use the phrase conspiracy theory to put down people who were coming at him and make them seem silly rather than him take responsibility for certain things that he said that proved to come true later. Okay, our first individual that we're going to take a look at, Morris Ketchum Jessup, better known as M.K. Jessup, was a very popular UFO writer of the 50s. It's alleged that he was murdered and that the murder was made to look like suicide, or that he was brainwashed into taking his own life, the reason being that he had gotten too close to some aspect of the truth about UFOs. There is no question that M.K. Jessup was an outstanding writer and researcher. His work, all published in the 1950s, is still highly readable and rises above the level of most of the so-called golden age of UFO literature from the 50s, except for maybe Donald Keyhoe. It's literate, it's articulate, it's backed up by facts. One thing to keep in mind as we move forward is while we're looking at, kind of the more tabloid aspects of how these people exited this life, for me, it's more than equally important that you have some understanding of who they were, what their lives were about, and how they lived it. Without that context, their deaths will not mean as much or be, much value looking back on this. Jessup's professional credits were varied and impressive. He began his career as an instructor of astronomy and mathematics at Drake University and the University of Michigan, where he also received his doctorate in astrophysics. The university then hired him to supervise what then would have been the largest refracting telescope in the Western Hemisphere. Jessup's passion for scholarship in the twin fields of archaeology and anthropology led him to carry out significant independent research at Mayan and Incan ruins in Central America and abroad as well. In the process, he became an acknowledged expert on megalithic stoneworks of Peru, Easter Island, and Syria, among other ancient locations. It was about this time in his life that he became interested in the subject of UFO visitations in both the modern and ancient world. In that, he really came on the scene as far as a proselytizer of ancient visitation a decade and a half before Von Daniken blew the subject open in the 60s with Chariots of the Gods. In 1956, while preparing to travel to Mexico to survey meteorite craters and continue his research into ancient visitations, the project's sponsor, which was the University of Michigan, learned that this man they had otherwise felt as a distinguished person, rightly chosen to carry out this important job, took UFOs seriously, and they fired him. His related UFO writing now bringing in very little income, just decided to self-publish his books, but he was not a very good businessman. It fell apart. 2 years later, he and his wife separated, distress in the marriage, as happens in certain cases where you have a partner who becomes dedicated or even obsessed with a mission, can fracture the bonds of even a very deep loving marriage, and that's what happened to him. He moved back to his home state of Indiana, where he worked as an editor and pursued his growing interest in psychic phenomena. This wonderful gentleman is Ivan T. Sanderson. Sanderson began his career in the late 1930s as a Marine, as a large mammal biologist, writing about jungle cats and the like. I would have loved to have met him. A gregarious guy, a brilliant writer, and smart as a whip. Somewhere along the line, he became interested in UFOs and wrote two very outstanding books, Invisible Residents and Uninvited Visitors. Invisible Residents is the first book dedicated to underwater UFOs, a subject that is now of great interest, and we know of even greater interest to the United States and of the Navy. This book came out, the second book on UFOs, Uninvited Visitors, in the mid-60s, and had the publishing distinction of being the very first book ever published with a hologram. That top circle is a cutout in the book jacket, and there is a hologram glued to the book. He became good friends with Jessup, and they communed on his subject. But at this point, Sanderson found Jessup in a very gloomy state, and complaining that a series of quote-unquote strange events which had, he hesitated to discuss in detail, had pulled him into, quote, complete world of unreality. During that time, 2 manuscripts which Jessup had submitted to an independent publisher were rejected, increasing his depression. The writer now left for New York, and soon after, left New York, where he had met with Sanderson, but did not return to Indiana and was missing for some time. Some months later, he turned up in Florida, where he had a serious auto accident that he was not interested in talking about. His depression continued to deepen, and in April 1959, he wrote a letter to his friend, the radio host Long John Neville. Neville deserves a quick footnote here that he was the first nationally syndicated radio broadcaster to make UFOs and their implications a huge broadcast subject. Frank Edwards, who we'll discuss later, kind of followed in his wake. But the letter that he wrote to Neville was, in the words of Sanderson, who had seen it, a straight suicide note. And on April 20th, the 59-year-old Jessup drove to a quiet spot near where he was living in Dade County, where he connected a hose to the exhaust pipe, ran the other end into his driver's window, rolled up the window, stuffed the openings with wet rags, turned on the car, and was found the next morning dead of carbon monoxide poisoning. There are several things about the suicide that don't add up. The space between the window and where the hose came in would have let in air, again, was stuffed with wet rags. However, there was no bucket or bag or any container that could have held the rags, and no sign of moisture anywhere. For some reason, the coroner's office did not conduct an autopsy, which is required by law in Florida. I read an account by an Oregon researcher named Richard Ogden in Seattle, who claimed that the suicide was, in his terminology, a frame-up, and that Jessup had been sent an audio tape, and that in listening to it, it had brainwashed him or reprogrammed his mind to kill himself. Again, one can only, there's nothing to back it up. That man's not alive to confirm the event. Sanderson's wife, Sabrina, also saw the suicide note, which Jessup had sent to her husband as well. To an alternative figure. And she said it was certainly a suicide note as well. I'm left leaning in toward that this man did take his life as his career collapsed around him, as his marriage broke up. But the fact that Jessup himself had talked about that he had been put into a space of complete unreality, that's kind of red flag for somebody doing something to someone. Also the idea that you could listen to a tape recording and it could hypnotize you or cause you to act in a way you would not otherwise. So I'm left with this case in Stanton Friedman's terminology of it being in my gray box. More research needs to be done on it. This remarkable woman is Dorothy Kilgallen. She was an extremely well-connected media personality and nationally syndicated newspaper columnist from the 1940s through the mid-60s. While she was best known to Americans old enough to remember this period of time as a longtime panelist on the then very popular TV show, What's My Line, make no mistake about it, she was also a very serious investigative writer who maintained a very highly critical attitude of the way that the press had treated the Kennedy assassination, and wrote openly and fairly accurately about the UFO cover-up in the 50s and into the 60s. Her column in the now-defunct journal American, which was read by quite a few million people every week, called The Voice of Broadway, alternated between an old-fashioned celebrity gossip column and hardcore investigative writing. In 1952, for example, she reported on an unidentified flying object that had crashed near Spitsbergen in Norway. Rational concern that the wreck might represent advanced Russian technology was undercut by testimony of the Norwegian Air Force colonel who claimed that the board of inquiry that had looked into this, quote, some time ago a misunderstanding was caused by saying that the disc probably was of Soviet origin. It has, this we wish to state emphatically, not been built by any country on earth, end quote. No, I take that back. The quote continues. The materials used in construction are completely unknown to experts having participated in this investigation. 8 years later, Kilgallen published an article entitled Flying Saucer Wreckage Assures Britain Reality. It appeared in May 23, 1955 in London's International News Service and was picked up by numerous newspapers there in Great Britain and abroad, including the Los Angeles Examiner. To quote, I can report today on a story which is positively spooky and to mention chilling, and not to mention chilling. British scientists and airmen are explaining the wreckage of one of mysterious flying ship, and they're convinced that the strange aerial objects are not optical illusions, but are flying saucers that originate on another planet. The source of my information is a British official of cabinet rank who prefers to remain unidentified. We believe, on the basis of our inquiry thus far, that the saucers were staffed by small men, probably under 12 feet tall. It's frightening, but there's no denying the flying saucers come from another planet. The official quoted scientists as saying a flying saucer of this type could not possibly have been constructed on Earth. The British government, I learned, is withholding an official report on the flying saucer examination at this time, possibly because it does not want to frighten the public, end quote. We now know that there were such considerations at this point in the early 50s. When Kilgallen made, while she never made her source public, and she again is talking about a cabinet level official. This is not some, goofball reporter or hack or cultist. Key investigators have speculated that the account originated with Queen Elizabeth's husband, Lord Mountbatten. Louis Mountbatten was a larger-than-life figure who was involved militarily, diplomatically, and ultimately lost his life in a terrorist bombing in London. Gordon Creighton, a former diplomat and British Army officer, military intelligence officer, went on to become editor of Britain's long-running Flying Saucer Review, which is the longest published UFO publication in certainly the English language in history. After reading her column, Creighton wrote to Dorothy Kilgallen at once, seeking further information, but never got a reply from her. And she died a few years later. We can take it as certain that she had been effectively removed, was Creighton's comment after Ms. Kilgallen's death was reported. Additional support for this account can be deduced from a statement issued at about this time by Britain's Air Chief Marshal Lord Dowling, who said in part, quote, I am convinced that these objects do exist and that they are not manufactured by any nation on Earth. Talk about disclosure. These were public statements made in the international press more than 60 years ago, and yet, here we are still living in the fun. There's Air Marshal Dowling. And the shopkeeper was Gordon Creighton. This gentleman is my friend and colleague Timothy Good, one of the most respected UFO writers in the United Kingdom, and certainly the best connected. He noted in his very important book about top secret, which should be in every UFO library. Quote, "Why should Dorothy Kilgallen risk her reputation as one of the USA's star journalists by propagating an untrue story? To the best of my knowledge, she never denied the story. Furthermore, a number of similar stories from reliable sources have surfaced over the years, not all of which can be discounted, however absurd they may sound," end quote. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Following the assassination of President Kennedy, Dorothy Kilgallen was one of the very few American journalists, not just with the intellect, the curiosity, but the flat-out courage to reject the lone gunman theory that Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone. She also, and I have no idea how, became the only journalist to talk her way into Jack Ruby's jail cell and interview him. The interview and other factors convinced the reporter that the president's murder was the result of a conspiracy about which she laid her thoughts out in a series of columns, even publishing the text of Ruby's classified testimony before the Warren Commission. Unfortunately, Kilgallen was very public about the fact that she was saving her best material, including the interview with Ruby and other damning material, for a book that she was writing. That may have sealed her fate, because on November 8th of 1965, she was found dead in her bed in her Manhattan apartment. However, there was a book propped up in her lap, and it was upside down. She did not have her reading glasses on and could not have read without them. She was wearing a sweater over her nightgown, which she would have never done in a room where it was warm enough. She also had her false eyelashes on, which she would have always taken off before bed. And although this may sound quirky, she had a big Manhattan apartment, had not slept in the master bedroom for years. She slept in a guest bedroom, and yet her body was found in that bed. Mark Lane, a pioneering JFK assassination researcher and author of a very important plausible denial, was convinced that Ms. Kilgallen had been murdered and that the CIA might have been involved. Not surprisingly, the extensive files that Kilgallen had built up on the incriminating aspects of the Kennedy assassination were missing from her apartment when her body was found. Given this, these and other significant confirmed factors that are too long to go into, I am absolutely convinced that Dorothy Kilgallen was murdered. One can speculate that it had to do with her interest in and fairly accurate reporting about the UFO phenomena, but I think for the forces that be in the mid-60s in the United States intelligence community, that would have been backburner. I think she was killed for what she was going to reveal about the Kennedy assassination. It's fair, though, to keep open speculation.